Now we know, and I always like to present research to our listeners. And so let's look at this right quick. Research shows that parents' involvement in their children's learning is a more powerful predictor of academic success than any other variable, including race and class. One study finds that 80% of the variation in public school performance results from family influences and not the teachers. Bottom line is this: parents, not schools, are the biggest determinants of children's learning. Again, parents, not the schools themselves, are the biggest determinants of children's learning. And so we're going to take a deeper dive as we move through this conversation this evening. Next slide, please. So for decades, education reformers have clung to the belief that school improvement alone can close the opportunity gap. And that's what we've thought all the time. But that didn't work before the pandemic, and parents and school administrators and school supporters, community supporters, everybody that's on here, it won't work now. The achievement gap has remained unchanged over the past half century, despite billions of dollars invested in classroom interventions. When it comes to educating kids, there's no going around the parents. Parents, you play a very important role in this space. Educators must work with and through them to ensure students learn across the continuum of home and school. Failure to do so will result in low-income learners falling further behind as the wealthy families confer ever greater privilege on their children. And that's very important, that last statement. You parents are the glue of the community. You are the ones that prepare our scholars to come to the institutions where we educate them. So parents, you play a very important role. Next slide, please. So we do know this: when parents are involved in helping their children learn at home, this is what happens. And we see this, and the research shows this. Parents that are engaged and have their children prepared to be educated, of course, receive better grades, right? We know that students who come from prepared homes many times, not all the time, but many times, have higher scores on standardized tests. We also know the most important thing to me is better attendance records. Now, attendance here in Mobile and in Baldwin County, just the counties where I am, they fluctuate. And I had a recent a healthy Facebook debate about attendance, right? So when I was growing up, we could not be withdrawn from school. My parents did not believe in that. So all of our dentist appointments, right, would be at 3:30. Now we got out of school at 2:30, so they gave us an hour to get to the dentist at 3:30. I recently went to high school in a particular county, and I had to go and do some work at that high school. I counted at 10 a.m. 15 students for early dismissal. Now, I don't know where everybody's going at 10 a.m. when you just got to the schoolhouse. But what that signals to me is this: I know as a teacher, instructor, professor, that there is instruction that is being given at a certain time in these classrooms. And so one of the parents told me, well, my child can get it virtually. They don't have to be there physically. Right, we've learned that virtual space works for some students, not all students. So I have students who tell me, Dr. Cunningham, I work better in the classroom face-to-face with my teacher. And so parents, you have to know the learning style of your own children, right? I'm a face-to-face learner. I must be in the space of the knowledge. I must hear my professor, my teacher talk. I must be able to give notes. Now, again, we live in a different era, a different space, but I guarantee attendance is important. My dad told me one time, if you go to school every day and sit down and shut your mouth, you at least get a C out the class because you at least will hear the information. And so I've always taken that to heart. So attendance is very important. Next, high aspirations. Go back to the, thank you. High aspirations. Set high standards in your space, in your homes. That's important. It's okay to push the children, your scholars, to have high aspirations. And lastly, more positive attitudes towards school and homework. So parents, you have to give the positive spaces in regards to school. I met with some parents recently, and they had nothing but negative things to say about the school space. True, false, but a lot of times you don't need to bring that into the space of the scholar, because if the scholar picks up on that, their attitude will be bad and negative as well. I can tell you, a lot of times, I know parents sometimes don't agree with maybe what's going on at the school, but that conversation sometimes need to be held with the adults and not fed onto our scholars, because you don't want the students to have a negative thought processes in regards to education and the institution. Next slide, please. We know that homeschool partnerships have been linked to academic success as well, but we do know this too. Parents, you play a role in creating self-esteem. A lot of times I meet with students in high school and middle school. It's the fact that they are academically strong, but also they may face issues with having low self-esteem. And we know, and the young men that I work with in my mentoring program, we really work on self-esteem and building their self-esteem. Once their self-esteem is high, they tend to, their GPAs, their academic success seems to increase. And we know that in mentoring, and again, in setting stable environments at home. We know improved behavior, if there are parents involved in a particular space, most likely the child will not misbehave, particularly if the child understands there are some consequences in misbehaving. And thirdly, more positive attitudes towards school. Again, parents, if you are involved in the local schools, guarantee that your student, your scholar, will have a positive attitude towards school. Next slide, please. So let's talk about a parent-teacher conference. I just had a friend who's a principal here in Mobile, at an elementary school, and she just made a Facebook post. She's feeling kind of down today. I'm going to call her because a parent had some negative things to say about, her as a person. And so I know she gives her all to her kids. And so I'm going to make a phone call to her and check on her. But sometimes the parent-teacher conference can be a space where both parents and schools and teachers can really make an effort to really push the narrative of where we want our scholars to be, right? And understanding the partnership between the parent, the teacher, and the school. So let's go to the next slide. So ways parents play a role in the education of their children. And let's look at this. First, parents, it is important that you be a role model. Parents are a kid's first teachers, parents. Again, I get opportunities to visit many schools, and I recently visited an elementary school, and I was helping with carpool, right? So standing in the carpool, I opened the door of several students, and the marijuana just knocked me out, right? I'll be very transparent in this conversation. I had never smelled so much weed at 6:30 in the morning in my life. And so now the student that's getting out of the car smells that way as well. And I thought to myself, what has this child seen? And it's only 6:30 in the morning. So parents, please understand that everything that we do collectively as a community, our children are watching us. Please make sure we all be the role models, play the roles that we want our children to be. Second, read together. Doing things together with parents give them a sense of support and confidence in regards to the students. It's also a good idea to visit the library together and share quality books to help them get additional knowledge than classroom lessons. And let's talk about this for a minute. So the first card I ever got was not my driver's license. It was a card to the Mobile Public Library. And I thought that was the biggest thing for me, to have my own card and it could be scanned, right? So that was like the totally awesome thing that I had ever received. And so I looked forward to going to the Mobile Public Library on the weekends, being able to check out books and listen to the books with my headphones and so forth. And that was a reinforcement, the library, of the information that was taught during the school week. Now, did I know that then? No, I was going to the library because it seemed fun. It was colorful. You could do items at play at the library. You could look at different inventions that people had brought to the library, different displays. So it was a good place for me to go, and many of my friends as well. So if you have time, parents, it's important that you use the items within your community. I know the Hattiesburg Public Library is about to put on a civil rights presentation. That would be good to take your scholars, your students, your children to that event. It's free. Most of the items at the public library are free. Most of the events are free. And so what that does, that gives it that extra layer to your student on what's going on in the classroom, and he or she can also layer that with the knowledge that they're receiving in the classroom. So the library is a very important resource for you within your community. Number 3, provide pleasant atmosphere. So parents, you should make sure that the kids are provided in your home with a peaceful and pleasant atmosphere at home. Unfortunately, I deal with students. I have a caseload of 150 students, and the majority of them, they tell me, right? I know this, but they verbally tell me that I come out of a chaotic home in a chaotic community. And so they say, Dr. Cunningham, that is so stressful when you're trying to get out of that space, right? And so I employ, and I tell parents all the time, we all live busy lives. We all are under pressure to do various things, to perform on our jobs, to make sure the lights are on, feed our families. But it's important, parents, that we provide a peaceful, safe, and pleasant atmosphere at home for our children. They need that. They need that space. They need that time with you. So do your best to create that space. Number 4, go for educational trips. It is a good idea to go for education trips during the holidays if you can. Encourage your child to attend school trips. Trips should include destinations that have some relevance with what they are studying to help them have a better understanding of the lessons. And I can give a testimony to this. When I was in high school, my high school band was invited to go to London, England, right? So I was in the 10th grade. So at that same year, we were studying Chaucer, Canterbury Tales. And so that took place in England as well. And so being able to go to London and England for 7 days and being able to see some of the things that we were talking about in our English literature class and being able to apply that real life experience, that was amazing to me. That I was able to write so much about Canterbury Tales because I had actually been in that space. So that's a long shot in regards to me going to London, but you can start in Hattiesburg. Take your children around the local historical markers within the city of Hattiesburg. Always start within the city and then proceed outward. So taking trips to Jackson, to the museum, or to the coast and museum, and then going to New Orleans to visit various museums and so forth. This will trigger your child's thought processes and will definitely help them within the classroom, parents. So a good educational trip is very important. I was lucky that my parents were able to take us on vacations during the summer, and every vacation included a visit to several colleges. So if we were on the interstate, say like we're driving in Mobile and we're going to Houston, so every time there's a college, we would take the exit to go visit that college, no matter the name of the college, no matter what type of college it was. My dad wanted us to wanted to expose us to what college is, what colleges look like, how they operated. And so this was like a game we played. Eventually, we started collecting college t-shirts. If the bookstore was open, we had to buy a college t-shirt. So parents, you could do innovative, creative things as that sort. Next slide. Number 5, maintain parent-teacher relationships. So don't skip the parent-teacher meeting and interaction session. So it's important when the schools send out messaging regarding parent-teacher conference or student night, parent night, it's important if you can to be there. If you can't be there, send a representative on your behalf. It is good to keep a good relation with your with your child's teacher. Learn from them about your child's activities in school and make sure to correct the child if something is wrong. So you want to make sure that you have an open relationship with your child's teacher. Now, I'll tell you this, parents, don't bully the teacher. I know a particular parent, she's a bully, and he's a bully. Let me say that. And he texts the teacher 24/7. And he's a friend of mine. And I had to tell him, like, don't do that. Don't text the teacher all the time. Just check in, let them know. But he's like, I got to know what my child is doing. So the child has to have space to grow. And so we always go back and forth about that. And so you don't want to be a hindrance to the teacher, but you do want to make sure that you're communicating with the teacher as well. Number 6, talk with your kid. Spend enough time every day to talk to your kid, your child, your student, even if you have tight schedules, even if that's in the car. In the car, if you take your child to school every morning, that's a great time to have a conversation. When they come in from football practice, cheerleader practice, track, whomever, it's important to have some sort of conversation. How was your day today? How was practice today? So learn from them about their concerns or doubts about any happenings in and out of school. So I think that's important. You need to know what's going on in school, and if they have any doubts or concerns about what is going on in school, and really listen to them when they're able to, when they're express themselves. Because we know, particularly with teenage boys and young boys, once they express themselves, once they give the cue or the clue that they're about to express themselves, you have to drop everything and listen. Because if you don't, it takes boys about 2-3 more weeks to have the courage to ask or to open up to talk about a certain situation. So I find myself, when I work with young men, if they have something to tell me, I pretty much stop what I'm doing and being able to listen. Usually young ladies are different. They're very vocal, but our young men tend to hold a lot of those things in. Next slide, please. Thank you. So parent-teacher conference, how should we handle that? You need to confirm the date, time, and place of the parent-teacher conference. So I've been on a parent-teacher conference and didn't know where I was going, what time, I forgot, all those things. So you want to make sure that you know the time, the date, the time, and place of the conference. If you are a parent and you have to work, let the teacher know this. You don't want the teacher, administrator, or whomever to be there waiting for you, and the time has been set. You may be able to change the time and also use Zoom, Google Meet as well to do a conference. So there are different ways now. The pandemic taught us this, that we can still have some type of conferencing. It may not be face-to-face, but it can be through the use of different apparatuses. So you want to make sure that you're able to still have that conference if you're not able to meet face-to-face. Next slide, please. All right, before the conference begins, parents, you want this to take place. You may want to take a picture of this slide or write something down. You want to ask your child how they feel about school. I think that's a good question to always ask your scholar at home. How do you feel about school? Do you enjoy your school? So I would definitely ask that before I have a parent-teacher conference. Ask your child if there's anything that they want you to talk about with their teacher. I think that's important. You'll be surprised what students are concerned about, and bring that, to that space with the teacher as well. Tell your child that you and the teacher are meeting to help he or she. So a lot of times parents go to the school and say, I'm going up there to see what you're doing bad, right? So now everybody's on edge, the child as well. So you really want to position this or to state this and saying, I'm going up to the school to meet with your teacher. We're meeting about ways to improve, to assist you so you can be a better scholar. I think that is the way you have to address this. Don't do the fear factor, and then that does nothing but shut your scholar down. Make a list of topics that you want to talk about with the teacher. We have busy lives, so it's good before you go to bed that night or when you have some peace in the house to write down some of the topics that you would like to discuss with the teacher or administrator. I think that's important. That helps the dialogue move. And then prepare a list of questions, such as, what are my child's strongest and weakest subjects? I think that's an excellent question. I was a student, I was weak in math, but strong in English, literature, history, geography. So those were my strengths, and my weaknesses was math. And so that's the conversation, you know, I always had to have with my parents, right? What's the strong suit, what the weakest? If it's the weakest, how can we make this catch up with your strongest? So those are things that you want to discuss. Does my child hand in homework on time? That's a conversation too. So now with virtual spaces, a lot of our students are asked to upload, right? Upload their work or to log in at a certain time. And so you need to have that conversation, parents, about turning in homework on time. I was recently looking at report cards of the young men that I mentor in the Capital League program, and I saw some C's, right? And I know these guys, some of my guys are pretty smart, but I knew the C's came from one thing: attendance, or you're not turning homework in on time. And for sure enough, it was not turning homework in on time, getting in late from a football game, practicing late, going home, eating and falling asleep, right? So we're really trying to work with our young men on how to schedule your day, how not to waste time in the day, and how to stay up when you come home from football practice, wherever practice you've been to, work, and really, you know, engage in your homework for at least 30 to 60 minutes to make sure everything is uploaded, right? That needs to be uploaded or turned in for the next day or for the week. Next, does my child participate in class? I think that's a great question to ask, particularly coming out of COVID. You know, many of our children were behind screens for at least 2 years, and now they're back into face-to-face. So you really want to ask that, does my child participate in class? I have some students who will not talk in class. They will not say a word. So really trying to work with them and kind of opening them up and making my class safe, so they feel safe to participate in the class, and really being transparent with our counselors on campus as well in regards of them and working with them to participate within the classroom setting. Does my child seem happy at school? Parents, you know that. You need to check that out. You need to look at that every day. If they're coming home happy-go-lucky, enjoying school, that's a thumbs up. But if they're coming home saying, I don't want to go tomorrow, I don't want to go back, you know, a conversation needs to be had, and you need to find out why. I enjoy going to school. I went to school every day. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed my high school days. I don't think I missed number one day in high school. From 9th grade to 12th grade, there was always something going on, something fun. I like social, so I'm a social buff. So I didn't want to miss school, stay at home in the house. That would have killed me. So always just find out what your students like. What can I do at home to help? So that's a question you need to write down too in preparing for a parent-teacher conference. So you can ask the teacher, what can I do to help? And when the teacher shares his or her thoughts with you, that's not to take that and be offended. I've seen parents be offended when they ask the teacher for assistance or what can I do at home, and the teacher gives that information, and then the parent becomes upset. So you have to go in, parent, guardian, with an open mind, and really know that this is for the best interest of your scholar, of your student. Next slide, please. So during the conference, parents, be on time or early for the meeting. That's important. In the meeting on time. Please recognize, parents and teachers, that other parents will probably have a conference after yours, right? So when you have parent-teacher night, I've seen this where the parents, you know, get so comfortable, start talking to the teachers, and they start talking about where they're going shopping. I'm going to the Alabama football game this weekend. You got a whole line behind you. I'm like, can y'all hurry up? So make sure you're there to talk about your student, the particular subject. If y'all want to chat and chew later on in the evening or the day or next days or weeks, that's fine. But don't hold up the line. Make sure you understand that other parents have to meet with the teacher or administrator as well. Relax and be yourself. I think that's important when you go up to school, to be relaxed and be yourself. But let me quantify, be yourself. So it's important, and to remember that these are places of institutions, right? And so, and I'm gonna say this, and I may get some pushback, but don't go up to the school dressed in pajamas, right? We don't want wife beater t-shirts, house slippers, hair bags, and that's what I see at some of these spaces, right? This is a place, this is an institution of education, right? And these places are revered and respected because learning is going on. And so I always tell my parents, my students, that this is a place where it has to be revered and respected, right? And we're going to do that. And so parents, when you enter these spaces, make sure that A, remember you are a role model. I think that's the key. And B, it is a conversation. Maybe at the school, you're familiar with everybody at the school, but know that your child is looking at you and other children are looking at you as well. So it's important that when you step out and enter these buildings, that you at least be respectful in your dress and your attire. Stay calm during the conference as well. I know there sometimes can be some heated conversations regarding our scholars. So it's important that all parties stay calm during the conference. Because remember, the goal at the end is to make sure our students, our scholars have the best support possible to be the best students they can be. Ask the most important questions first, parents. I think that's important. Ask the most important questions first, because that's on your mind. So go ahead and ask those questions first. Ask for explanations of anything that you don't understand. Never leave the space, parents, not understanding. I tell my parents all the time, ask as many questions as you like, because I want everyone to be on the same accord, same page when we leave. So ask as many questions as you like if you don't understand. And teachers, administrators, many times parents don't understand the language that we use, like, these acronyms, the AACC test and TTTT test. And sometimes I don't even understand. I have to look them up myself. So avoid using that jargon, right? Really speak to the questions at hand. Ask your child's teacher for ways that you can help your child at home. And then lastly, parents, it's important to thank the teacher, right? Teachers are underpaid. Let me tell you that, and with the work that they do for 7 hours a day to really work and move students from one level to the next. It takes a lot of energy, and you have to be 10 toes down to move students to the next level. And so it's always great, parents, to thank the teacher. If you want to make the teacher some type of thank you card, that's always important as well. Always thank your teachers. Next slide, please. So after the conference, so we've had the conference, I've given you how to prep during the conference. Let's talk about after the conference. Talk about the conference with your child, the information that you would like to share. If it was me, if I was a kid, I can remember being at home just waiting to see what the teacher said, right? Like, talk about the positive points and be direct about the problem. So talk about things that the teachers, to your scholar, to your student. If the teacher says some positive things, shower your child with that. If the teacher said, hey, we need to work on some things in the class, be direct with that. Like, don't sugarcoat that. Develop a solution. Talk about how are we going to make this educational space and experience better. Have that conversation. Tell your child about any plans you and the teacher created. Never surprise the child, right? The parent and the teacher had the conversation, but the parent didn't come home and tell the child that there's going to be a plan the next day. The child comes into class and there's a different behavior from the teacher, and there's this plan of action. Now I'm confused. As I'm a child, I'm like, what? I don't know. What is this? Right? And so go ahead and make sure you prep your scholar, your child on the plan. Don't surprise the child. Don't do that. That's another level of stress on the student. Keep in touch with the teacher during the school year. And I mentioned that earlier. Keep in touch, check in. How is he or she doing? Buzz an email. I'm just checking in. And so that's important to do as well. Next slide. So lastly, it's important that we connect all of these things, the parent, the teacher, the student. It's a circle, it's a connection. Everybody has a role to play in order to make sure that our scholars are the best, or being in the best environments, achieving to our high aspirations, and really setting goals for our young people. Set goals for yourselves as parents, right? Get involved at school, join the PTO, the booster club, get involved in that space. Teachers, keep doing an outstanding job in your space. Make sure you're communicating with the parents. And parents, I'll say this, don't go up to the school when there's an issue. Go up to the school when there's something positive going on, right? Go up to the school and say, y'all need some help. I tell parents all the time, if you have time, volunteer for 30 minutes. I can help volunteer selling in the concession stand. Those type of things really matter. And then you're engaged in the community, in the school, and you're able to see as well what's going on in the spaces also. And you can be a part of the solution of, there may be some issues in the space. And as a parent, you're there, you can see, you can be solution-based as well. My dad was the band booster president when I was in high school. At first, I didn't like it because I didn't want him to, be quote unquote my business. But as the time went on, I think back on it now that, him being there and watching him be a man and really run a marching band with 250 members and taking care of business, I'm now I can say, wow, Dad, I'm really impressed with the work you did for us when I was in the high school marching band. So remember, parents, you are role models, right? So your children are looking at you to see how you are functioning and operating in these spaces. Next slide. Any questions? I can't see the chat. Any questions?
I think Miss Darcy has a question. Can you make it to where she can speak? Miss Baxter, please. I see her hand is raised.
Yes, ma'am.